Welcome everyone. I'm Will Barclay, the Customer Success Manager here at Transvirtual. Appreciate everyone joining in. Today, our February webinar is going to be focusing on our WMS module. So this is an additional module to your current Transvirtual portal, but it does slot right in. We'll get started straight away. We may have a few people joining. Just to let everyone know, this is recorded. So as we go through, if you feel like we're flying through a little bit quickly, don't stress. We'll record this and send it through and publish it for everyone to view as well. So yeah, don't feel like you're going to need to be sitting there taking notes. Sit back, relax, and just take it all in. And feel free to jump on the Q&A with any questions. If we can't answer anything during this session, we can always come back to you. So just quickly, today we're going to be covering off some aspects of the WMS. So we'll give you a brief overview, explain who this is best suited to, how it appears in your system, and generally what is involved and what is it best suited for. We'll then talk about how you can set up your warehouse module, what are the standard configuration options, what it's the process you normally follow. We'll also then talk through how you can utilize storage and movement rate charges. So similar to how you set up your transport rate cards, you can actually set up rates for each customer in your system and make sure you're charging them appropriately. We'll then talk through the inbound process as well as your outbound process. And lastly, we'll just show how that process links through to creating a consignment as the final piece of the puzzle. So big advantage of using the WMS module is that when you are processing outbound orders, you can actually convert them through to a consignment and then view them as a consignment in your Transvirtual portal, following through the normal process. So I'll jump in. A real quick snapshot of our WMS module. As I said, it's an existing add to your Transvirtual account, so it's an additional paid module you can opt in for. You interact with it through the Transvirtual web portal. Your customers can do too. So if any of your customers that you're storing any items for need to actually go and report, of inbound stock or process sales orders, rather than emailing you or contacting you, you can set them up and have them log into the portal and place those orders. It's very similar to how your customers would be manually creating consignments through the portal today. Our WMS is ideal for anyone who's currently recording warehousing activities manually. You might be using pen and paper, you could be using an Excel spreadsheet, or perhaps you're utilizing a system that's quite outdated, or even perhaps that is far too overpowered for what you actually need to use. We're really great at addressing simple warehouse procedures through the WMS module at the moment. So, if you're mainly doing pallet storage, you've got a low volume of sales orders, you may be storing a lot of items, you could be storing a lot of stock. However, if it's just one order going out, could represent, a couple of tons of goods. The WMS module can be a great fit there because we're not overcomplicating the process. It's really easy. You can record storage really simply. You can process inbound and outbound and charge your customer all through the one portal without spending too much money on a full-blown dedicated WMS module. So great if you're sort of stepping in, just starting out, or your focus is transport and logistics, and you really just do some 3PL warehousing on the side for your customers. So quick look at the configuration of the warehouse module. As anyone who's jumped in Transvirtual before or who's done some configuration there before, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's good just to set the scene and sort of break down how we translate your setup into the Transvirtual configuration. So first thing we want to do is just map out your warehousing. So first things first, you may have one warehouse or multiple warehouses. You start with your warehouse, you can link it to a head port, and you can have multiple warehouses linked to one head port. So you may have a main depot being New South Wales, and in that you have 3 warehouses within that hub. You can set them up, but then what we do is drill down into each individual warehouse. And each warehouse would be split up into zones. So traditionally you'll have your inbound, your outbound, and your storage zone. Now you can get more granular, whether you may have multiple zones within an inbound area where you need to allocate freight. Your storage area obviously gets split up further. You may have a dangerous goods section. You could have a chilled or a frozen goods section as well. There's plenty of options there for you. It's all about how it aligns with your setup. Once you've got your zones there, when you talk about your storage areas, you can then start to talk about your bin locations. So you think about your aisle. Each aisle has a number of bays, and then depending on the number of shelves, you have a height. So you could put in a height of 2, which means you have 2 shelf locations. There is a fourth option as well, where you can have an alternative position on a shelf as well, and that would just give you a bit of depth as well. So say you could store 2 pallets in one physical spot in front of you, you could actually have a second location there as well. Lastly, we do also let you define bin types as well. So a bin type could be something as simple as just floor space, it could be pallet space. It's just a configuration option that helps you not only communicate with your team and record what's in there, but also just help you control information and make sure that anything is being assigned correctly and you're not assigning the wrong item to an incorrect bin type. Moving down into our inventory, so what we're storing for our customers, your stock types could be something generic like chilled, frozen, general goods. You could be flagging dangerous goods. Again, just a really easy way to flag different stock types that you keep on hand, and also making sure that when you go to set up a bin, you can determine which stock type needs to be allocated to that bin. For example, dangerous goods is a good example where you may set up certain goods cannot be stored next to each other. So the bins that you create, you make sure that only a certain type of dangerous good can go into one bin, because next door that you've got some flammable objects there, such as paint, anything like that. Coming down your stock items, really important. So every bit of item that you store on behalf of your customer, you record through the system. This underpins all of your stock take, all of your movements, all your pricing. Key important factor. We'll run through this and just remind everyone, we're going to jump into the system. We're just sort of setting the scene today at the moment. So lastly, your stock units and measurements. And this will make a little bit more sense when we jump in, but these tie into your stock items themselves. So if you imagine I store some flour on behalf of my customer Coles. Obviously, they'd be sending that to me in pallets. However, they may report to me that they're sending me 30,000 individual packages, and I know that 200 packages will mean that that comes on a pallet. What we can do in the system is set up rules to say that 1 unit is equal to 2 kilograms, 200 units equals a pallet, and that will weigh then 400 kilograms or however much I need. And we can basically set up a series of logic for each stock item to make sure that whatever is reported through the system, TransVirtual is converting that into the appropriate storage, whether it's a pallet, a carton, anything larger as well. We'll run through that. It'll make a lot of sense, but it just gives you a lot of control and make sure that when your customers are entering data or your team's entering data, the system's doing a lot of the legwork to turn that into the appropriate method if you need. And we'll also just talk about charges as well. So how you can set up your storage and your movement charges. So as part of your key operations, you want to make sure that for every move in this system, you've got the appropriate charge set up for your customer, as well as storage, and also the frequency at which you charge your customers for that storage. So we'll run through that. Nice similar setup to how your TransVirtual transport rate cards work, which is really handy. So it's a nice simple process flow there, and we'll show you how you can set those up and tweak them as you go. So from there, we're actually going to jump into the system and just take you through some of those key areas. Just jump and share my screen there. And thanks for your patience, everyone. And just quickly, as we go in, you'll see here I'm on TransVirtual. Along the top menu here, I've got my transport tab, my finance tab, all of the other areas you normally see. And with the warehouse module enabled, I just have an additional drop down there, and you can see all of my different warehouse options available to me. So a quick note, if you aren't on our latest theme and layout, the warehouse module is a bit more difficult to find. It is hidden amongst different areas. So I would suggest if you are looking at the warehouse module, make sure you have a look at our latest theme and layout and make a transition to that, because it'll be a lot easier to pick up everything from this nice layout here. So coming into the warehouse, the first thing we're going to look at is just doing some configuration of the system. Down the bottom, you can see I've got a nice little section for configuration and setup. And the first thing we're just going to look at is my warehouse locations. So as I said before, you may just have the one warehouse, or you may have multiple warehouses spread out. Essentially from here, all we're going to do is create each warehouse. You can see I've got a few created here already. And then I can simply just link that to the appropriate depot or head port. I can define the default bin type if I need to. And if we do have multiple staff members who do picks, we can pick a default picker through there. I'm going to leave that blank now. That is typically one setup a lot of people don't like to use. With our typical use case and the customers that use our system, they do process a lot of manual movements. We'll run through that. You do have the options to get it quite technical with who you assign your picks to, but ultimately we're just going to keep it simple today. And for anyone who would like to delve into that a little bit deeper, feel free to reach out and we can organise a one-on-one session to dig a bit deeper into anything you might have. So after creating my warehouse, I can then jump in and look at the individual zones within that warehouse. So as mentioned before, by default, we want to make sure we have an inbound, an outbound, and a general storage zone. So as I create a new zone, on the right-hand side here, I have the option to adjust a few details. You'll see down here, important thing to note is your warehouse zone type. And so you just want to make sure you always have an inbound and outbound zone as well as your storage. And what we also have the ability to do is we can actually create bin locations using a little wizard that we've set up here. So for example, if I was to create a brand new storage area, I might even call this my dangerous goods zone. When I go to create this zone, I can tell the system how many aisles I have, how many bays will be within each aisle, how many shelves, or what is the max number of heights I have. So for example, I might just have aisles listed as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 6 aisles there. I just list them out by comma separated. Next thing I want to do is identify how many bays I have. So for each aisle I create, what are the different bays? And we might say, well, we've got 3 bays or 2 bays per aisle. And then lastly, how many shelves do I have? And I might have just the one height. So I just store everything on a floor level. If I have more than one height, I've got 2 shelves there, I can actually add those in. And lastly, I can also define those positions. So if you imagine you'd walked up to a spot and you can actually store 2 pallets behind each other, I might add these extra positions in just to make sure that I'm accounting for that too, knowing I can store those. So I've got 4 different coordinates I can attach there. So that is optional. All your other areas are simple. So in the case you just had, say, for example, you just have 1 aisle per customer, you don't have any bays or heights, it's really just 1 aisle and that's where everything gets stored. You'd simply just leave your bay and your max height at 1. So basically you'll end up with 1 single bin location per aisle. It'll just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a following 1, 1. And that's all you're left with. So if you just got a very simple setup, you want to start really simply, you can use that setup, or you can start to drill down a little bit and get a bit more complicated and start to really map out those bin locations across your warehouse. So going to quickly jump in and I'll show you when I've created these already. Once I've hit save, you'll see the wizard will actually then create those aisles and we can jump in and go view bin setup. Sorry, just a misclick there. What we can do is jump in and look at our zones and bin locations. So let's go into our outbound zone. And what we can do is add new bins if we haven't added them. So for example, I might want to add in my own bin locations. So for example, this could be dangerous goods aisle. And then what we can do is add in the appropriate ones. Now, if I'd used the wizard, I could have actually had them automatically set there and adjust. I also have the ability to import bins as well. If you have an existing Excel file with all of your aisles and your bin locations, you can import them and you can also export them out as well. You do also have the ability to print out labels for each of your bin locations too. Similar to other areas in TransVirtual, like your consignment labels or any of your consignment templates, you can adjust what is visible here, but you can essentially create a bin label for scanning purposes and to refer back to. So now that we've set up our bins, what we can look at is just tweaking this a little bit. So if I do want to drill down into accepted stock types, for example, for a dangerous goods or a chilled or frozen area, I can associate labels with them. What that means is when I go to set up my stock items, I can also set up the stock type against that. And that means I'm not incorrectly assigning chilled goods into a frozen bin and vice versa. So it's quite flexible. It's all about configuring this and making sure it's a fit for you. But ultimately, what you want to do is make sure that you've hit the appropriate level of configuration that suits your requirements. So just quickly as well, if you did want to actually drill down into bin types, you can configure more than just your standard bin as well. So you can set up weight, volume, quantity. These are just identifiers, easy ways for you to split up your warehouse again, and just another configuration option. So now we've set up our warehouse, what we want to look at is our stock items. So coming back down into the warehouse menu, I can jump down into my stock items. And you'll see here a list of stock items I've already created. When it comes to stock items, it's a one-to-one relationship between your customer and the stock you store for them. So say, for example, I store flour for both Coles and Vandelay Industries or Smith Farms. I still set up the stock title relating back to that individual customer to make it easy for me to track. So if I do want to create a new stock item, all I have to do is basically click this little plus button here. I can give it a title. I can add a description. I can add a stock code if I need to. And then more importantly, I want to add who the owner of that stock is. So which of my customers this relates to. And if it's relevant, I can add a brand year of manufacture and that stock type as well. So again, tying back to that, when it comes time to allocate the bins, we can just have that level of control to make sure we're not incorrectly allocating stock to a bin that's not suitable or a location that's not suitable. So looking through my list, when it comes time to look at other fields for my flour, for example, I can see I can just quickly click on that. Under my general tab, I can edit any of those initial settings I created. I can also start to look at my unit of measurement. So this is what we were discussing before, whereby I can set a base unit of measurement, and that's literally one packet of flour. When it comes time to turn that into a consignment, I can tell the system what freight type that relates to, lining up with my freight items from my Transvirtual TMS side of things. So I'm going to say 1 unit just goes into a carton because we've got nothing smaller. But realistically, what I'd be doing is down below, I'm saying I want to convert this to a pallet when I have 200 units that are sent through to me, either from a sales or an inbound receipt. I can then define what the length, width, and height of that pallet will be, what is the weight, and the corresponding freight type into my Transvirtual system. Now you can continue to add more and more units of measurement. It is important just to make sure that, say, for example, if you were to add a carton, which is smaller than my pallet, you need to make sure your carton appears before the pallet in that order. So it will work down when it looks for these conversions. So I want to make sure I set up my carton here first, and then my pallet down below. And again, all that's just saying is if I've got 60 units, turn that into a carton. However, if it's 200, we'll actually jump down and convert that into a pallet. And say we had 260 units on order, that would then say, okay, we're going to create 1 pallet and 1 carton for you based off this. Lastly, just with any of your stock items, you do also have some additional fields you can fill out. So alternative codes, you can flag whether it's dangerous goods. You can get a bit creative as well in terms of how many physical bin spaces does something take up. For example, if you've got oversized pallets you're storing, they may take up more than 1 bin space. You can indicate that. You can also link to suppliers or agents set up in your system too. So the way Transvirtual WMS works, it will rely on your customer and agent list as well as your staff list for anything. So really, if you've just got warehousing customers that aren't in the system today because you're not using them for any shipping, you just set them up under your customer list and they're visible there. So really quickly, I'll just take you through. Down below, you can set up your stock types as well. So I've shown you chilled, frozen goods, general. These are just list items you can create. So you can create as many stock types as you want. And then essentially taking us back here, we can associate that to individual stock items. Now, for anyone wondering, common question, you can import your stock items as well. So if you have a large list and you don't want to be manually entering this when you're configuring a system for the first time, you can just go and do an import. A really easy tip is just to export out, set up a sample one. So you might just set up, your spark plugs, for example, then export out your stock items to show you all fields relevant. You can fill that out further, then re-import that list here. Perfect. So from here, we can start to talk about how you can set up charges for your customers. So outside of my warehouse tab, I want to jump over into my finance tab, and under where I would normally just adjust my rate cards for my customers, when I have the warehouse module enabled, not only do I have my transport rates, I then also have movement rates and storage rates as well. So very similar setup. I can essentially create a new rate. I can assign various customers to it. If I want to set up a default rate card to apply to any customers, I can do so. And then I can also set up my effective dates, very similar to how you'd set up your transport rates. Coming into an individual rate card, what I can look at is on the left-hand side here for my movement rates, I've got all the different types of movements available through the system. This will make a little bit more sense when we just look at our inbound movements from our stock receives through to our inbound internal movements as well. But essentially what I'm doing is tying in a movement to a stock unit of measurement, and then also just if it varies between warehouses, I can identify those different charges. And for each movement, you'll be able to set up either a basic rate, a flat rate, a quantity rate for the number of items you're moving. You can also then set up your minimum and maximum charges really simply. And again, that can vary. So you can set that up for each of your pallets, for individual units or cartons. And effectively, what will happen is this will appear on your customer invoices, similar to how your transport rates will appear. When it comes time to recording storage charges, coming back into the rate cards here, under our storage rates, we can do the exact same thing. I jump in here, and the options I have available here is to determine the frequency at which I will charge a customer. So we can take daily charges, fortnightly, weekly, monthly. We can then again define it per stock unit measurement, per warehouse, and again, flat rates, quantity rates, minimum charges. So nice and simple, very similar setup to how you would set this up for your transport rates, just obviously converting that into your warehousing. So moving through, you can set up your rate cards early on in the piece. It's good to get an understanding of what sort of movements you can see here, as well as what storage charges you want to apply. When it comes to actually determining when you calculate these, if you go into your global setup here, for anyone who's got the warehouse module enabled, you'll see a warehouse related rules. You can look through and just see some simple options such as when to charge storage. So you might say we charge weekly on a Saturday. You can flag any exclusions to charging. So for example, don't charge on public holidays, anything like that. And then you've got a few other simple settings you can do. And what you can do is these can be overridden at a customer level using the rate cards as well. So for example, if you've got variations to when to store for a certain customer, when to charge storage, I should say, you can adjust that from those rate card screens. So now we're going to look at our movement processes. So we're going to go from our inbound process, talk about how customers can notify you of stock coming in, how your team can record stock that's been received. We'll also talk through the options available for completing putaways, or if you just want to skip that and do a quick move, we'll show you how to do that too. From there, we'll talk about what the movement process can look like from your team, and then we'll also talk about your outbound process, so sales orders being recorded, how you can decide where items will be selected from each warehouse, which bin are you taking it from, what does that look like from the staff member side, and then also how do we convert that into a consignment. So firstly, when it comes to recording inbound stock, if your customers are really good and they actually inform you of stock that's arrive at your warehouse, your customer could jump into the customer portal and record a purchase order. You see here looks really similar to your consignment screen here. So from a customer perspective, it's quite easy. They're just going to identify where that's coming from. For your team, if they were actually jumping into the portal to record this on behalf of a customer, they could do this from here and select the customer as well. And then what we can also just say is it going to a specific warehouse? So that's not for the customers, that's just for our internal admin staff if we needed. What's most important for the customer down here is they can look up the stock that they're looking to bring into you. So for example, my customer Coles, they have flour. They can also search for available items as well. So what you'll have is, because you've linked that one-to-one relationship between all your customers, They'll only see the items that are relevant to them that you actually store for them to make sure there's no issues with data entry. They're only seeing what items are relevant to them. So I can click this little plus button here as the customer. I can add it. When I look at items on order, I can say, okay, I'm going to send you 1,200 units. Or if I prefer, if my customer's a bit better, they can say that's 12 pallets I'm sending you. Now, when it comes time to save, we'll just simply hit save here. And as a customer, my job's done. I've informed the warehouse that this is coming. And from the warehouse team, we would actually see this from here. Now, the alternative is if your team are just receiving notifications or they've seen something turn up in the warehouse and they need to record it through the system, your team can skip the purchase order and instead just go straight into the stock received screen here. From this screen, I can see any previous stock receives, and what I can look at is the current status of it. Where does it sit within the warehouse? And I can also then create this inbound batch, so record inbound batches coming in. So for example, I've just noticed that we've received 12 pallets, or we'll say 20 pallets of flour on the floor. It's currently sitting in my inbound zone, which I'd set up. And then I can also attach any other relevant information. So purchase order numbers, batch numbers, lot numbers, the date of arrival. If we are needing to track expiry dates, we can also then record the expiry date of this batch that's come in as well. So when it comes time for people to decide which freight goes out first, they can look at batch expiry dates and make sure they're looking for the key expiry date that's soonest rather than accidentally picking something that's not going to expire till next year. So as we come through, can see we've got our process there. So we've gone and processed the batch. I can sort by these fields. When I'm looking to review data, same with all other TransVirtual screens, I can pick and choose what columns are visible from here. So what information is relevant to me. And then as I sort through, I can decide, do I need to create a movement here? So when it comes time to review this, what I can look at is go to my inventory by bin. I can look at my inbound bin here and I can see, have I got any freight in here? So I've got actually 33 pallets that are on the shelf at the moment. Out of my existing sales orders, there's actually 13 pallets already committed to a sales order. So I know that I just keep a quick eye on those stock takes. Available, I've got 20 pallets sitting there. So from here, I've got the option to create an internal movement. And what this will do is create a put away assignment. I can define which bin we'd like to put the item away to. Or alternatively, if my team member has actually already gone and completed the move, I could actually just flag a quick move and say, okay, this has been put away. It now sits in location 5-01. They put away 20 pallets. Very simply, that's how much has gone away. It's just recording what's happened. But what I might want to do is make some decisions. And if I go to create internal movement here, I'll get a much better view of all of my bins, what is currently sitting in those bins, what is the availability, what is the current quantity. I can make some decisions. And what I might want to look at is, well, maybe I want to make sure I'm not allocating to a bin that's already got stock in it. I may want to make sure that I'm allocating all of my stock into one bin that can fit everything. I can make a lot more decisions from this screen. So from here, really simply, I can just look at my source bin. I can see any bins that currently have that stock in it. I can also see when I brought this batch in or when this batch turned up, and then I can just get a quick snapshot of any of that other key information. From the list down below, I can start to look at all of my available bins. I can sort really quickly by quantity available. So I may just want to be adding to my general storage bin that's already got some pallets of flour in there. And again, just taking it back, when we talk about a bin, this could just be a floor space. It's all about how you've set this up and what suits you best. So really, this could just be some floor space, and I can fit as many pallets as I want in this little area. What's more important is this is where I'm storing all of this flour for Coles. So from there, I can click my little plus button. Down the bottom of my screen, I can say, well, I'm allocating 20 pallets to that bin here, and I can click create. If I wanted to split it up and 10 are going into that, and then another 10 are going into a new bin, I can split that across 2 different bins as well if I need to. Once I've hit create, now what that will do is actually create an internal movement requirement for my team. So from here, I can go to my warehouse screen. I want to look at my movement. And from here, I can decide who is going to be completing movements. Now, depending on your setup, you may just have one staff member, and realistically, they're just going and completing this. They can see from this screen what they want to do. They can print a pick slip if they need to. But ultimately, what you might want to do is just get your team member to go do the putaways, and then they can click manually complete move. Now, that's a really simple setup. It's great if you just want to be recording. Again, for those people who are looking just to replace a spreadsheet, or who really purely are just recording what's happening in the warehouse and the team are all over it. They're just going about their day and we just want to record it. This is great because I can just manually complete the move. This stops here. The team member's gone and completed the put away. It's all done. Now, in the event, we need to actually allocate this to an individual picker. We've got a team of staff members on the floor, and we want to make sure we're considering their workload and assigning work fairly. I can create and assign this pick. I can look at my two different warehouse workers. I assign it to the individual. And now that individual has that pick assigned to them. You can see it's cleared off my list. I've now only got one more pick to allocate. And what I can do is give it to this person here as well. So I can spread the workload amongst my team. Now I know that everything's done. I can have a look and see, okay, from this little movement assignment detail, I can see I've got 3 movements awaiting movement. So basically waiting for my staff to actually go and take these and put them away. So again, what we could do from here is the team members themselves could be jumping in portal after they've completed the move, or they could be jumping in here and having a look. They'll see just their assigned picks. They can print their pick slips from here, or I can print them out before on their behalf if maybe I'm their manager. I can go and print that out. And what we can do at this point in time is now, once they complete them, we can manually complete the move, or they could jump in and actually flag them as completed themselves. So what would happen is when your team members jump in, they're saying, yep, I'm starting this, I've completed it, and we'll see that progress through these different screens here. So at the end of the day, when everything's done, we can review this completed list. We can see what's being closed off. We also have the ability to view what's currently an active movement as well. So what's been assigned to a staff member, they've started, but they haven't actually confirmed that they've finished it yet. So you can keep track of everything. And from a management perspective, just make sure you're on top of everything and nothing's falling through the cracks. So when it comes time to complete this, we basically then have our stock in there. When the stock's in the system, it's being charged. We've got our storage charges applying. Our movement rates have applied because we're processing movements through the system as well. And then it's obviously just sitting there until it's ready. And when a customer places a sales order through the system, they can jump in again through the portal and create a sales order for us. Or alternatively, our team are jumping in again. So maybe Coles has emailed me and said, hey, Will, we need to send something out to, let's see, let's go to Broken Hill Distillery. We're going to send some stuff out there. From here again, what we can do is pick from the list of available items what is actually genuinely there and able to pick from. We can pick whether we want units or pallets. And then I save that sales order. So now that my order is being created, under my warehouse tab, I can look at the warehouse allocation and decide, well, where are we going to grab this flour from? So depending on my setup, I might have multiple warehouses that store this. I can see where we're needing to send this. I can see it's going to Broken Hill. Again, if you just wanted to tweak what's available in terms of the information from the screen, you can quickly look through here and you might be looking for sender sub, could be head ports, anything like that. But ultimately what I want to do is say, okay, well, for this order, where do we want to take it from? I'm going to go from Brisbane. That's the only place I have available. Once I've allocated my warehouse, the next thing I can do is click this little drop down menu and say, okay, actually going to figure out which bin we're going to get it from within our warehouse in Brisbane too. So I can, from this screen here, I've got a list of all of the orders standing by which need to be assigned to a bin. So having a look at this one, I've got 10 pallets. I can allocate a bin. Similar to when we actually decided where we were going to actually place this stock when it came in, I can hit my bin allocation and I can decide which bin I'm going to take this stock from. And what I'm going to be using here is information such as, quantity, batch arrival date, which you can all see here. And the first thing I might want to look at is, I might say I don't worry about the inbound because they're ones I haven't processed. The little trick for anyone, what you can do is filter you can search for key terms, or if you've got a nice little list, you might just be sorting alphabetically like I am. I also might be wanting to look at batch expiry dates and just make sure we're going to grab the most recent one. So from here, my most recent expiry is the 1st of May. However, that's from my inbound bin. It's not really relevant. There's none left because we've moved it. Instead, we're looking at a general here, and perfect. We got 4,000 units. If I select that, the system goes, okay, there you go. There's your 10 pallets. We can take that. If I didn't have enough quantity in that bin, it would advise me and I could pick from multiple bins. However, we've got plenty of stock there, so I can create that order. So now that I've actually processed that sales order, I can print the pick slip and assign to a picker if I need to. So for example, that's going to go to Will Barclay, send for picking. When Will Barclay logs into the system, he can actually go and complete that pick and tell me that he's completed it. Alternatively, as the manager, I might know that Will's gone and completed that already. I can see that that's waiting to be picked. Will's come back to me and said, that's all done. It's already ready to go. I can look at it and we can have a quick check and we can then actually complete it. Or alternatively, we can let Will jump in. So by clicking pick completed, that's now processed. We're confirming that's ready to go out. And what we can look at is from our consignment creation screen, I've got that Broken Hill Distillery dispatch, got my 2,000 units or my 10 pallets. What I can do is convert this into a consignment. So from here, if I want to add in any weight, so that's going to be, say, for example, 400 kilos. It's going to be 1.2 by 1.2 and by 1.6. It's going to be a package pallet. So when it comes time to bill the customer for the consignment, that'll convert and associate with that. I'm going to say it's actually just one quantity because it's one single pallet that I'm flagging. And then I can add any references or comments from here. Once I create that shipment item, I now have my freight item being dispatched. So a single pallet going out, 500 kilos. And now if I need, I can then decide when are we sending it out. It might be a few days. So we're going to actually send that out on the 4th of March, create the consignment, and that's all completed. So from there, if I jumped over into my consignment screen and I looked ahead of time at the 3rd of March, I would actually see that available. What we would see is, because I haven't finished that off, that will show. But what you would see is your consignment there. I skipped a step. I didn't click my last little movement there, sorry. But essentially, you'll see that as a consignment that'll appear. And then your team can go and allocate it to a driver, get it shipped out, nice and simple. So quickly, now that we've completed those orders, what we'll quickly look at as well is just the impact on your customer invoices. So as you go through and you're completing movements, you'll notice that you'll see invoices being opened up for your customers for storage as well as for movements. So from here, I've got a series of movement charges that have been applied to my customer. You can see the movement type there and the associated costs. So when it comes back time, if I want to charge for quick moves or internal movements, I can associate individual charges with those. But ultimately from here, I can understand what's going on. My customer can see it too when I go to invoice them. They'll also see an additional chat tab. Say it was tomorrow after I've done some daily charges for storage. Overnight, we'd see some storage charges coming through on this invoice as well. So really simple. From there, you basically just follow your standard invoicing process for your customers. Not much changes there. Straightforward process of just confirming, locking your invoice, sending it across to your customer, getting paid. So everyone, that's a nice overview of the warehouse module. We went through pretty quickly. There are some additional configuration options and you can go further and further into the module. If you would like to learn a bit more or lock in a one-on-one session or explore the module if you feel it's a good fit for you, please do reach out. You can reach me at will.barclay@transvirtual.com. We'll just quickly pull this up on the screen as well so I can share with you all of my contact details. If in doubt, always reach out to support as well. So support@transvirtual.com. They're always available to answer any questions you have and they can always put us in touch. You can also schedule a support team if you're on the appropriate support package, giving yourself a chance to book in a little 15 or 30-minute call with the team members. that's it for today, everyone. Do appreciate your time. Hopefully you've learned a bit. And as I said, do reach out with any questions regarding the warehouse module. And you've always got our support team there for any other questions if you need a hand with anything. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.